Once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, we are live here at the Investor Show. As always, this is your gracious host, the Prince of Investing, Prince Dykes, coming to you guys and girls live all the way from the beautiful city and state of Denver, Colorado. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, comment, and share button. If you're catching it live, tell us where you're checking in from. If you're catching the playback, hope you enjoy the playback, and also tell us where you're from as well. So, as you guys and girls can see, we're going to be talking about NFTs, blockchain technology. Is pretty much taking over, dominating the market. You know, we're seeing cryptocurrency, Ethereum, all these whole new fintech ideas, cloud computing, all these things are taking over. I'm no particular expert in either of these fields. I watch and go along with everyone else. But also they say it's not about knowing the answer, but knowing how to find the answer. So that's what the conversation is going to be about today. We have a very, very special guest that's going to be checking in with us live today. To give you a little bit about his background, he's the CEO of he's the shadow CEO, and his name is Athan Slotkin. So Athan Slotkin is a serial entrepreneur, a serial business person, been seen on major outlets from CNBC, all things like that. I can't remember all the names, but a couple major media outlets. So without further ado, I think he's checking in from California. We'll double check when he get on here. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and give a nice round of applause for our live guest. How's it going there, sir?
What's up, Prince? How's it going?
Definitely. Thank you for coming on today. So the first question I want to get into, because I know people are going to ask this question, and it's like, wow, I've never heard of Athan. Who is he? What is he about? So let's first get the first question out the way. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? How do you get to this point today?
Yeah. So, I mean, part of the reason, you may not have heard of me is I tend to serve as this quiet person behind entrepreneurs and founder businesses, right? So my job is to work with founders and entrepreneurs and help them get on their way and give themselves the best chance of success with their current business and future businesses and things like that. And that's how I spend my time. I came from the consulting world. And I've always been an entrepreneur and kind of landed here, work with lots of entrepreneurs all day, every day. But as it relates to that, my job is also to just always scour the market and figure out where there's opportunities, where there are angles that exist and ways to make money. So it applies to, both my entrepreneurs, but then also certainly for myself too. So the blockchain NFT space, as you know, hot and heavy, man. So you gotta pay attention to that space and see what's going on always.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the true value of NFTs, right? So this is what I know about NFTs. It became pretty popular. I want to say earlier this year, last year, when people were saying, "Hey, this is going to be a new way." Back in the day, we used to collect baseball cards and memorabilia that way. Now it's going to be digitized, where people are going to be able to put up their music. Artists are going to be able to put up their music. People are going to be able to put up drawings and all these type of things, sell them as an NFT, and they're going to, even authors are going to be able to put up a page of their book, a cover of their book, and every time that book is sold, they're going to make money, and artists are going to be able to put up the albums, all these type of things. And I said, wow, that sounds very interesting. What is that? How does that work? So my first question to you is, what is the true value of these NFTs?
I mean, NFTs at the end of the day, right? Like right now, I think people are seeing them as these like pixelated art, and that's most of what people are seeing. But in reality, what it is it's ownership, right? It provides you rights of ownership to something, and with that comes technology that's linked to it that enables automation of various things, right? So you own this thing, this asset, whatever the asset is, and because you own that asset, you get rights to certain things, and that could be rights to, from an access standpoint. That could be rights from a royalty standpoint, where you make money every time something happens. It can be a variety of rights that exist, but it really just means at the end of the day that you have ownership to something.
Okay. All right. Before we get into the next question, I wanted to acknowledge, I can't say his name here, but Alan Dimmer, he said 20 years guy from Romania living in the UK. All right. Thank you for checking in live. All right. All the way in the UK. Okay. All right. Now I got to ask this question, right? So you say, now, what is the invisible hand behind all of this? Like you said, hey, an artist can put up a thing, a digital token, essentially, and this artist put up this digital token, and he can label out who gets rights to royalties or whatever, and the person can sell it and sell it or whatever. But what company, who is this doing this thing that making all this world work?
Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, right? You have teams of very smart people, far smarter than I am. Who are enabling the technology underneath. You have developers that are building these platforms, right? So when you use, words like Ethereum, for example, right? That's a network. That's a chain that exists, right? And there are others that either build on top of Ethereum or that are
Mhm.
their own standalone chains, their own independent chains. Those chains enable people who are artists or people who have assets or whatever to put their assets on there to be able to sell and have rules built into them such that when somebody purchases it, this is what happens. When another person purchases that asset and it's resold, this is what happens. There's no need for escrow. There's no need for contract, for informal manual contracts, lawyers, things like that. There's firm terms that exist within there that are upheld on a binary objective basis, and you can guide that, right? If you're the creator of an asset on there, right, you get to guide exactly what rules you want in there. It's kind of like, it's not unlike, you go on Wix or Squarespace or something and you want to create a website and you kind of just use the widgets that they have to create the website that you have.
Mm.
Not everybody's a developer. Many artists aren't developers. Many people who are selling assets aren't developers. So they need the tools there to easily be able to create these contracts, these opportunities for people where they can purchase the asset and get what's promised in the rules.
Okay. Now, with that being said, when you look at it, it's the business world. How can a business, we always talked about collectibles and athletes and entertainers using them. What about, hey, I have a small business or maybe a large business. How can this be useful in the business world?
Yeah. So I think NFTs I view them as the evolution of membership programs that exist, right? NFTs, if you're a business, will provide your customers or whoever's buying these things access to something. And so this is where the creativity would come in, right? The question is if you're a business owner, what is it that we can provide access to that our customers are going to value, right? So what could that look like, for example, right? That could look like knowledge, private channels to get knowledge. That could look like private member communities. That could look like, if you're a local business, early access to come in there, an hour before anybody else can come in there. Something that they could show off to people, some kind of special item that they can get, early access to new products that are releasing. People like access, right? People like access at the end of the day and exclusive value. We've seen, this example with American Express for years and other membership clubs that exist, right? People like access. So, as small business owners, think of this as a souped up loyalty program where you can provide certain members who purchase these things and show their loyalty to you special access. This doesn't need to be necessarily a really good looking, JPEG file like many of the things that are coming out right now, although a lot of people like those because they could show them off online and in other places. But more importantly, it's this concept of utility. So it's not just this this visual asset that people see and can share, which is nice also, but also that you can actually use it for something. That ownership of this gets you access to certain things at the business.
Okay, let's make it make sense to the point of, like, let's say I'm a small mom and pop restaurant.
Yeah.
How can I use NFTs to bring in a level of asset? How does that work? Access.
Okay. So we own a local restaurant, right? And it's called Prince and Athan's, right? It makes God knows what dish, right? And so our customers love us. They come in there, they love our food, they love what we produce at the place, right? They love the service that we have. So they want to stay more attached to us. They want to support the business, but also candidly within the community, they want to be the proud person that has this NFT or set of NFTs because it's something they could show off in the community and people value and things like that. So it's both things. So what we can do is we can say, hey, we want to reward our best customers who are backing us. And so we're going to sell these NFTs. And these NFTs will enable anybody that buys them. Our restaurant, we have really specific hours, right? We only are open, from 12 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Well, if you have this NFT now, that rule has changed. You can now come in for this, for the secret breakfast that exists that nobody else has access to. It's only for NFT holders. 9 a.m. you can come in and you get access to this thing. Nobody else gets access to this, right? And only if you sell it to somebody else can they then get access, right? But otherwise it's yours. Similarly, we have this really secret dish that exists that it's incredible. It's top rated. nobody else can get their hands on this unless you prove that you have access to this NFT. If you want to get a behind the scenes look and work with our chef to see what they make and see how they make everything back there, only with the NFT access, not happening any other way. And it's a whole variety of things that go on from there. So that it could be, capturing your image as part of the website, for instance, so that other people can see who these people. I don't know. It could be a variety of things, to be honest with you. Okay. All of which, we think our customers might value. So it requires a little bit of creativity, to be honest with you. But you just have to, figure out what it is you think really people would love, and then you can go sell that. And it's a good way to raise some capital for the business as well.
Now, can that company, like say if I purchase that NFT, I can go back and sell it for a profit, right?
Yeah, that's actually the beauty. Yeah.
Okay. So pretty much I look at it and say, with all these award programs, Macy's has a card and Walmart has a card and Target has a card and everybody has all these different cards. Essentially, couldn't they utilize NFTs instead of doing the traditional gift cards?
Yeah. I mean, that's what should happen in theory. If you're working and putting in your energy and time to be able to work your way towards a status level, you should be able to own that status level. That's an asset that you should actually have yourself, right? So in theory, you should be able to resell it if you want. And, of course, there's like some incentive alignment questions that exist, right? For airlines, for example, they want people who fly a lot, and those are the people that they want to reward. But let's just say that person didn't care about it and somebody else wanted to purchase it instead. That seems like it's a thoroughly reasonable thing to give somebody access to in theory, barring like the psychological dynamics that exist there. That seems like it could be reasonable. And for, whoever the business is that issues the original one, they also get royalties in perpetuity with these things, right? So if you go produce an NFT, you sell it to somebody and they decide to resell it to somebody else, that original creator of the NFT will actually get a cut of that sale as well into the future. So certainly for entertainment, like you mentioned, concert tickets, this does all the things that we want it to do, right? It rewards the original creator as this thing evolves over time.
Okay. Now you have me very interested because I'm just like 10,000 things went through my head of that could be gotten rid of, like shopping cars could be easily gotten rid of, all these exclusive membership tickets, things like, hey, I go to the comedy show all the time, So now that you got me very interested, I got to ask you this next question. As an investor, I know you are, Ethan, how would you position yourself or how would you invest into NFTs?
I think there's 2 to 3 primary ways that you can go about it. I'm just kind of, keeping it pretty tight for now, at least. I think option number 1 is you can invest directly in NFTs. You go find NFTs that you think have value, not just in the short term, but you're looking for something. You want to have long range vision in any NFT that you're going to invest in. You want somebody, the creator, to be very invested in always adding value to their NFT. So it's always a very prized asset that you're investing in. So it's really important, that you consider that. It's not just about what this thing is worth now, it's also where it's going to go in the future. Option number 2 is you can invest in some derivative of NFTs as well. For example, there are coins or tokens that are focused almost explicitly on NFTs and serve as more of, let's call it like an index that exists, right? Within that same bucket, there are also NFT funds that exist online. So it's the same concept as that. Instead of investing in one specific NFT, you get exposure to a variety of them. But the other way that you could consider too is you can go create your own NFT. We just listed out a bunch of different business types where it would make sense to create an NFT. But what's the difference between a business and an individual at the end of the day, right? I mean, obviously there's reputation that exists, and so you need reputation because that's how you get backing in your community. But if you can come up with something very innovative and creative that people want, there's an option to create an NFT as well and sell NFTs, just making sure that you're accounting for like the roadmap and vision, right? There's these pragmatically, like there's these very short term, we're going to make some money kind of NFTs that exist. And we've seen some of those churn out sometimes. But then there's the better ones, which have vision, have a roadmap attached to it, have a plan for where it's going to go and how it's going to continuously improve. Those are the best ones, right? Because then you get community that rallies around you. You're constantly repaying your community in value. And then you're just going up, 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 up together, all while your trust is improving as well. That's the best scenario that exists.
Okay, and I'm going to get down to the practicality question here in a
Yeah.
second, but I got to ask you this one first. If you was going into the NFT world, would you invest into maybe a stock of a company that maybe invests into the NFT market? Would you go in and buy the NFT directly, or would you look to create your own NFT? So would you try to find a company
Um,
and say, hey, you know what? I don't know which company out there is leading the charge on the NFT market, but let's say if it's a company like Snowflake or Google or something, do you say,
yeah.
hey, let's really invest into them? Or do you just say, hey, I'm going to find an NFT on there, like you said, and buy that? I'm going to buy that Michael Jordan first dunk in the NBA card or NFT, or am I going to buy my what you call it? You know, not
Yeah.
buy are you going to create your own?
Yeah, for sure.
I
So my
think that's the
answer to
only
that,
three ways you can get involved, right?
I mean, there are probably other ways, but we're,
Yeah.
we're focusing on the main ones right now. And my answer to that is all. But let me explain why specifically. Okay. The stock version of it makes a whole lot of sense. I'm very, very, very bullish on NFTs. I think that's the future. I think that's absolutely where assets are going to go. Look, assets have existed for a long time at this point, and they're great, right? We have a lot of different assets that exist out there, all sorts of things, real estate and art and, sports cards and, all sorts of things that exist. But NFTs, constitute a technological improvement over what existed in the past, right? Number one, there's very clear history that exists. It's called provenance is the term for it. It means that you can
Mhm.
see very clear history of who owned it in the past. Make sure that you're getting the real deal, right? No worries about that. Number two, no spilling, no damage, things like that don't exist because we're in digital asset land at this point. And number three, they're liquid, right? So it means you can actually buy and sell them more easily. There's no having to get them, verified. There's no,
Mhm.
getting your cards checked. There's no having to pack it up and send it through eBay. None of that stuff, right? It's online. Go online, see the assets that exist, purchase it, and you're done. That's the end of the transaction. Instant, payment as well. So that's also quite seamless. It's automatic. So definitely bullish on NFT and NFT companies that are helping create in the space, helping creators create. So that's number one. Yeah.
Now, I got to ask
Um,
you this question, Ethan. What is the number one stock you would look at, or what company are you liking the most that you're bullish on in the NFT world?
yeah, that's a good question from a stock standpoint.
From a company, who you think is heading that charge and going to be the person that's going to benefit the most?
As I'm looking at companies that have touched NFTs so far, big companies, right? DraftKings has been doing some things in the NFT space recently.
Mhm.
I'd say it's a little bit early, and I still think they're working through it, but DraftKings has been doing some things. Um, Also, recently we've seen last week, I think it was, both Budweiser and Visa have signaled that they're toying with NFTs and kind of touching them and feeling it out a little bit as well. Both of them purchased NFTs. They kind of put it online on Twitter. So
Mm.
obviously they're dancing around the space. Visa even published a white paper on it. So you have to assume all payment companies are going to be kind of touching that space as well for a variety of reasons. So these are the companies that have been touching that space so far. At least a few of them. I look more towards cryptocurrencies and crypto companies that are touching it because these are who are creating the platforms to create NFTs and have marketplaces for NFTs, right? So you have things like creators that exist like companies such as like Flow, which is Dapper Labs, and you have Wax. Those are a couple examples of companies. Candy has come out recently. A few examples of companies who are very, very focused on helping boost the NFT ecosystem, enabling creators to create of all types, right? Be it sports teams, be it individuals, all kinds of things. So I would certainly be pointing my attention there because I think NFTs, they're here to stay. There's no way around it. So those who are focused on creating that environment to help people create more and more easily and market more easily, that's where my attention is definitely focused.
Okay. Now, Ethan, um, let's talk to the practicality portion, right? So people
Yeah.
say, hey, create an NFT, buy NFT. Where do you go to even start this? Is it NFT.com? Is it NFT.org?
Yeah.
Do you drive to a place and say, hey, what are the NFTs at? Where is this marketplace?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So there's a few places that you can get them. So let me just simplify the market for a second here, right? there's creators that exist first and foremost, and these are the initial people who are creating various NFTs, be it sports cards, be it art, whatever it is. And creators can be either a team, or it could be an individual, like an artist, for example, right? And they usually have these releases that exist. They're called drops, right? Much like there are clothing drops that exist, or sneaker drops that exist, right? They have drops, and drops basically mean that they're releasing a certain number of them. You can go on there and you can purchase directly from them, right? And that's usually, quite an interesting thing for people, because you're getting them at a pretty reasonable price normally, that you think is a pretty good entry to be able to purchase them, right? So for those, you just have to monitor Twitter, monitor all sorts of places to see when they come in. When they say that they're going to have a drop, what you need is a digital wallet to be able to purchase, okay? And what is a digital wallet? A digital wallet is essentially, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a wallet that has money in it, that has coins or tokens in it, right? And that's what enables you to pay. So quite simply, you get a digital wallet. It's a little bit different in several cases. One digital wallet that people commonly talk about is MetaMask. That's a common one, but there are many of them that exist. And you purchase coins, and you could purchase them on exchanges such as Coinbase and other places that I'm sure people have heard the names kind of floating around. You load them into your digital wallet, and then you click a button that says connect my digital wallet, and you're free to purchase at that point when these releases happen. The other way you can do this is that there are marketplaces that exist as well. And marketplaces, as it sounds like, just list all sorts of NFTs from different creators and enable you to purchase it, much like StubHub, right? Like StubHub, for instance, you can buy tickets to different events. Well, these marketplaces, you can buy NFTs from all different creators and from people that own these NFTs at this point who are listing them for various prices. You can go on, you can click and pick what you like and purchase it directly from that person, and it's seamless and you're on your way. So examples of that would be like OpenSea is an example, or Rarible is an example. There are a handful of marketplaces that exist, but it's really just as simple as find the initial projects and browse, or buy it from the secondary market and browse. It's really that simple.
Okay, so pretty much you got to buy from the primary market, which is finding somebody who's actually selling their painting or book or whatever, and then or you can find somebody who already owns it and buy it from them, and then okay. Well, before I get into the next question, hey Starks, what's going on? Hey Starks, he says he's live from Chicago. What's going on?
Hey, Athan.
Nice. Now, the next thing I got to ask you, now we got to switch the gears here for a second. We got to get into this thing of blockchain technology, right? So before I get into what I asked you what you invest in, I want to bring up the right thing here. Blockchain technology. I like it. Makes a lot of sense. I think I got a pretty good understanding, but can you explain to the audience out there who's catching this live and the playback, what is blockchain technology and what is this place in the real world as well, the true value?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm just going to preface it by saying I'm not a developer myself. I'm a product person and a business person, which maybe is a benefit here because I'll give the simpler explanation that exists, right?
Thank you.
The premise of blockchain technology is, if you think about historically with every business that's existed, there's a centralized entity that exists. So everything has to pass through them. So you go to the bank, you have to, deposit or withdraw, and there's a central body that decides whether you can do that or not, right? You work with any big company, there's a central body that decides whether you can transact with them or not. It's a very centralized experience that exists. The concept behind blockchain, of course, is removing that centralized body. So what you have is a series of computers that are dispersed all over the world. And what that does is it enables you to transact, right? It doesn't consider who you are or anything else. It enables you to transact. And those different computers keep a ledger of the activity that exists to make sure that it's all seeing the same thing, right? And so if you make a transaction and there's a transaction that goes through, they're verifying the transaction. That's their job of these computers, is to verify the transactions are good. Why it's beneficial to have these multiple computers all over the world is because they can collectively verify what's real or not. So if one computer is raising its hand and saying, no, I disagree, I actually think this is what happened in history, but all the other computers are saying, nah, like here's what's actually happened, you could know what the real history is, right? With complete precision, what's going on. So there are, hundreds, thousands, millions of these computers dispersed globally to be able to remove the need to have a centralized body that's making all the decisions. And why is that good? Well, it's good because that group of computers and people attached to that network, have aligned incentives of upholding, the integrity of the network. There's no perverse incentives that exist. These are people or computers, in an organization who are motivated to make sure that all transactions are fair, that all the history is immutable and clear. It can't be changed, but it's the real verifiable data, and that there's no issues that ever happen. It removes the need to have a centralized power at the end of the day.
Okay. Now I got to go back and ask you this question, like we did with NFTs. Investing in blockchain. Is there a blockchain company out there that you like? Some people saying, hey, look at this ledger. You just spoke about it. We're taking away that central computer, and all computers are on the same chain, following the same thing. How would I invest into that as an investor?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways that you can invest into it. Okay, to simplify, there are the actual chains that exist themselves, and so an example of the chain would be like Ethereum. That name gets tossed around a lot these days, right? And what Ethereum is, for simplicity's sake, you can kind of think of it like it's Windows or kind of a Mac operating system, right? It enables you to put things on top that provide value, right? Like apps and things like that, right? So Ethereum is an example of, let's call it, an operating system that exists that enables people to build on top, or teams to build on top, and create apps for people where they can do a variety of things, where they can trade, where they can buy NFTs, where they can buy insurance, where they can do all of these things that you might want to do to be able to purchase, right? So really the two options to oversimplify are, one is you can invest in these chains that exist, right? Saying, I think this is the future of the operating system world and what's going to be used as the foundation. Or you can say, this is a really cool app. I think people like this. I think they're going to want to use it. I like how it's actually set up for the future. I like what the economics are in terms of how the currency derives its value and how it's going to grow. Therefore, I'm going to invest into one of these apps as well. So really simplifying it, there's those two kinds of things that exist. Of course, there's a whole variety of kinds of apps that exist, right? Much like stocks, there's restaurant stocks and financial services stocks and insurance and clothing and technology and a whole variety of things. Similar concept in this case, right? This is web 3.0, right? So we're humans, we have similar needs, and technology develops, so a whole variety of things. But to really distill it, you can either invest in chains themselves, or you can invest in the specific apps that you may be interested in that you think are going to be here to stay.
Okay. Now let's go back and put it together. NFTs versus blockchain. What is the difference? And if you had to choose one, who are you the most bullish on?
So blockchain is the foundation that everything gets built on, right? You build NFTs within the blockchain, right? Without blockchain, there are no NFTs. You remember all those things I was saying earlier about smart contracts and having things automated. So when somebody purchases your NFT and then they resell it, that the original creator, you get paid for that, right? Or that it has some kind of rules attached to it, that you get access to things or whatever, right? None of that exists with an automated system without blockchain, right? So blockchain is the operating system at the end of the day, right? NFTs is one particular vehicle that exists that also improves it, right? Both are here to stay. I mean, at the end of the day, both are here to stay. The question is really, much like stocks, right, is which project you really believe in. When you're monitoring, okay, kind of like if you were looking at stocks and you wanted to investigate, what would you do? You'd look at the company, you'd look at the history, you'd look at who the team is, you'd look at what their roadmap is, what their successes have been, and then you'd say, well, I think this stock is a good value. I think it has a lot of room to grow. I'm going to invest into it. Same concept here, right? Like, look at the blockchain teams, look at the NFT teams, look at the other project teams, and say, I trust this team. I like what they've done in history. They seem to really, care about the ongoing value that they're driving to their community. This is what I'm going to invest into. So for me, to give you the answer to the question, I'm investing in both. I think NFTs are here to stay. I think the ownership, I think blockchain's here to stay. I think that's the way the web is going to function in the future. It's more sophisticated. I'm investing in both. And what's interesting, though, is that you don't know within there who's necessarily going to win. I have guesses of who's going to win, right? I have guesses about who's setting themselves up well and who has a vision. And I have confidence that that those will set up well. But like stocks, you don't know, right? Like, people didn't know that they were, what was going on with Enron necessarily before Enron became Enron, right? So before that, it was just a seemingly hot company. So we've guesses, and we're using the same intel to make good decisions. Use that same intel. It's just a similar concept to stocks. The only difference is, in stocks you're buying, revenues and assets and things like that. In blockchain, you're doing a similar thing, but these coins or these tokens also have utility, meaning people can use them for things. And that's what drives the supply and demand a whole lot, or the demand a whole lot for why these tokens become quite valuable.
Okay. Now we got to say, this could be the kryptonite. We know with every technology, we always have technology that comes out that people say, hey, this is the latest and the greatest, and this could never be defeated. I'm putting the word here, Bitcoin, but I mean by, do you think Bitcoin will be hacked? Do you think we'll get to a point one day that somebody can figure out the algorithm and hook up a computer and, oh my God, cryptocurrencies have been infiltrated?
Yeah, I mean, it's technology, but the reason why it's built out with this network, right, with thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of computers, is that it's impossible, really, at the end of the day, for someone to gain control of the whole network, right? That's the whole point of distributing it. So can hacks happen sometimes, especially in early development? Yeah, like minor things can happen sometimes, right? Like there's no doubt about it. We're early, right? Like that's the whole point. When the internet was being created originally, things happen, right? Like you learn lessons and you improve over time. But this is the wave. My bigger concern is not so much about will it be hacked. It's going to take time for full consumer adoption, right? Because there's different levels of comfort in terms of adopting everything, be it from this to even an iPhone or whatever, right? People are comfortable at various times. Obviously, there's like a little bit of headwind as it relates to governments, and governments not quite figuring out how to fit in and like what their role is. So that's a little bit of a thing, but this is decentralized technology for a reason, right? It can't be controlled by a government. That's the whole premise that exists. That's why it was created to begin with. So, I don't think, the concept of a large hack, really exists. I do think small things can happen sometimes, and there are definitely examples of learning opportunities that have existed and that are still existing right now, to be really honest with you. But that's kind of what you're talking about, the investor side. Like that's what the risk adjusted value is that exists, right? If you're willing to take on a little bit more risk, there may be some more rewards that that exist, right? A brighter rainbow at the end of it. So, for example, if you invested in Bitcoin a lot of years ago, you'd be in pretty good shape right now, right? But you had to take on the risk and the uncertainty of where it was going, and we're still solving things and figuring things out. So that was the downside of it, right? But I think it's quite developed at this point. There's a very good community around it. There's a whole lot of incentives that exist. I think this is just going to continue to progress. It's just better technology at the end of the day.
Okay, because I think that my personal opinion is that as NFTs grow and blockchain grow, I think it's going to create an ecosystem of like cybersecurity is going to become even more and more relevant.
Yeah.
More, or whatever. So I think it's going to create a whole ecosystem around it for it to exist. So that's kind of my take on it. Now I got to ask you, what's going on? ERJ Enterprise. The ERJ is in the building. What's going on, ERJ?
What's going on, ERJ?
Checking us out live. Now we got to ask this question. We talked about this before the show. As soon as I can find it here. What is Athan investing in? What are you investing in? What are you bullish on? I know you're bullish on NFTs, things like that or whatever. So we want to know, what are you investing in?
Yeah. So look, I still think stocks are a thing. Okay. Stocks aren't going anywhere, right? There are still companies that exist, whether they migrate to using blockchain technology or not. Like stocks are still a thing, right? They're not going anywhere at all. So that's first and foremost. I'll tell you what I'm not so interested in investing in. What I'm not so interested in investing in is in gold, to be honest with you. I think gold it's an asset. It still exists and it still has value. I just think that
that's the gym.
There you go.
The gym.
Hey, sample size one here, but I think Bitcoin, for example, is just a better version of it. There's scarcity that exists. It's technologically driven. It has a big community around it. So I think that's, a better version of that. But there's also, other examples of the same thing like Ethereum. So the way I'm looking at this overall is I'm saying, look, okay, I spend a lot of time watching this and monitoring and everything, but I don't know the answers, right? Nobody knows the answers. So what I believe in is diversification. So I believe that this technology is going to work. So I'm placing my bet on a variety of ecosystems that are out there. So Ethereum is an example. Solana is another example. It's called Solana. That's been another ecosystem that lately has gotten quite exciting with a lot of activity, right? There's another one called Cardano that many people hear about, especially if you go onto TikTok and places like that. There's a whole bunch of these ecosystems that exist. I'm investing in a bunch of apps that exist. I agree with you that I think security and insurance products are going to be very important, because even though I don't think the blockchain can be hacked, I do think individuals' accounts can be hacked, and individual security is a thing. So people will want their assets protected. And so insurance products will be quite valuable in the future as well. But there are many, many, many tokens that exist. There are many NFT providers that exist. So the only antidote to that, to me, is I don't need to be right on every single one, right? I need to be right on some small percentage. And it's early enough at this point that the returns will be great enough that they'll far supersede, the losses that exist, the L's that exist from, from the ones that dissipate. And I do think like a good chunk of these projects are going to dissipate, right? I mean, what you have is, first off, the prices of cryptocurrency are very volatile, as everyone's seen, right? And they're seasonal. So like sometimes when there's this winter that exists, the prices are low, and teams, as you can imagine, could get demotivated because they're not earning enough money and they have real life bills to pay and things like that, right? So some percentage of these projects I do think will go away. They won't get the traction that they want, right? But I do think a handful of them will stay, and they're invested for the long term, and they're here to stay. And so I'm taking a diversified group to invest in networks, invest in NFT projects, actual NFTs themselves, right? Be it, the first Jordan play, like you said, or whatever else. A variety of things, knowing that we don't have the answers. Nobody can predict where it is. And I want good risk adjusted returns, right? Returns. I still think Bitcoin is upside. I still think Ethereum is upside. I also think there are projects that have even more upside than those projects, but they may be a little bit riskier too. So I'm taking, a pretty diversified approach in terms of networks versus apps versus NFT projects, all the way across the board.
Okay, I know I kind of gone on my time here a little bit, but I got to ask you with this one question. You know what they say, in order to experience joy, you must experience pain, right? In order for a baby to be born, you must experience. I'm not a philosopher in poem,
Yeah.
Doing any type of poetry, but in order for us to say, "Whoa, look at this new industry," who is going to die off? Who are we going to kill? And like, bye, we're done.
It's a really good question you're asking. It's the most interesting and kind of fun question, right? It's not gonna
I
necessarily
want to make sure I
be.
sell those stocks. That's why.
Yeah, me too. I don't know it's necessarily going to be explicitly killed off. It's either going to be kill yourself or get killed off. I think they have the ability. All these companies have lots of capital and the ability to innovate right now. So it's either going to happen is somebody's going to out innovate them, or they're going to have to innovate themselves and get ahead of the curve, right? So let me just give examples of companies that will have to evolve, right? A very easy one to see, right, because it was the very foundation of this to begin with, is like the payments and remittances business, right? The whole premise of this is, why does it take me, days to be able to put in a wire request that's going to, Thailand as an example, right? And, goes through my bank and it gets routed and it takes 7 days to reach the person. It shows up in a different currency. Large fees are hit on the other side. Like problem after problem in that process, right? All these new currencies solve that problem, right? Like you have the person's address, right, to be able to send it to. You put in their address, you put in how much you want to send to them, and ping, instantaneously it sends across there, and they have their currency to be able to spend, right? It's literally instantaneous. So, payments and traditional payments and remittances are certainly at risk, but again, these payment companies can adapt. Insurance companies are at risk, right? Insurance companies, the whole process is I'm buying insurance because in case something happens that I hope is very objective and not subjective, I get paid out, right? Like if there's a claim and something actually happens, I get paid out. So what does new age insurance look like? New age insurance looks like, well, that's very precisely and specifically and objectively built into the contract when I sign up for an insurance product that's on the blockchain, right? And data is fed in. And if the event happens, I get paid out. If the event doesn't happen, I don't get paid out. And then the payments get taken on a monthly basis, and it's automated, right? It's literally that simple at that point. So you could just see like it's just turning to faster and more automated and more objective and more transparent, and less risky from a consumer standpoint and from a buyer standpoint. So those are just a couple examples. I'm not just picking on those, but those were certainly the start of the foundation of blockchain. But real estate's going to be similar. Supply chain is going to be similar. Supply chain management, anything where there's automation, tracking, transparency. All those businesses are at risk at the end of the day to be kind of evolved into the future.
Okay. Well, anything you want to leave out there for the live audience and for people catch the playback?
Look, that's all I got. I spilled it all. I spilled it all right now.
Oh, you're in California, right?
I'm in California right now.
Okay,
I'm a New Yorker. I talk fast. That's how you know I'm from New York. But I'm in California now.
You're in California. Okay. Definitely thank you for coming on. And I definitely how can people follow you? All of the good stuff like that. How can they get some more?
Yeah. Go. You can find me on my website, just shadow.ceo. Or you can find me under my name on the socials at Athan Slotkin. And drop me a line if you have questions. I love talking about this stuff. So if you have a question or anything, reach out, say something. I'd love to connect with people.
All right, definitely. Thank you for coming on. Well, ladies and gentlemen, until the next video, podcast, cartoon, or whatever else crazy you see me do around the globe. My name is Prince Dykes. This is the Investor Show. Peace, be safe, and I'm out. Thank you.